So when we originally connected, Gabrielle, you were thinking like a salesperson and not like a principal.
Yes, I would suggest so.
Yeah. And talk about how that transition began to take place in your mind. Purely thinking like an agent and where's my next transaction going to come from, to begin to think like a principal and say, hey, how can I not just sell something, but build something?
Okay, so thinking like a salesperson, I felt super attached to the outcome. I was just stressing about the next transaction and things would get sloppy during the process, right? Like maybe I would stop a follow-up, forget to touch base with this client, etc. And then obviously I've been coaching with you for a while and listening to your YouTube videos, and I don't think it really resonated with me until I actually came on the Elite Builders Retreat in Sedona. And just being in a room with all of those agents. I mean, I think there was someone that was 28-year-olds doing nearly $1 million in GCI.
Because you're somebody that is, very productive. You're certainly in the top, 10% of agents across the country. You do about 27 million in volume. You've only been in the business 5.5 years. You're relatively young. Maybe you can talk a little bit about, because I know that, because you're smart, hardworking, and ambitious. So that's not difficult to understand intellectually. It's actually really, really difficult to do experientially, to apply. So maybe talk about kind of some friction points for you on applying that into your life now, as far as making different decisions financially, and then also, putting systems in place in the business. Because in order to do that, people typically have to slow down and they get scared, and then they end up not into, building the systems.
I think that falls in line with optimizing for status and comfort versus time and freedom. So it's so easy to do everything yourself, right? Because then you don't have to take a step back, train someone, put the system in place, delegate, trust someone else with essentially your money, because you are under the false belief system that no one can really do it like you, or they may mess something up. So that is a way of us optimizing for status and comfort, right? Because we want to be comfortable, and we're comfortable and we're in full control. But I think to manage your business and to grow, you do have to delegate and have those systems in place, and take a step back to make the systems in place and train someone to do that, which also takes time, and that takes time away from you being in your business and producing. But ultimately, it's for the greater good, right? So I think it's important to think like a principal, because then, when I was in Sedona, my business wasn't thriving, right? Because I need to physically be here to produce.
Yeah.
And that's not sustainable. I want to be floating in the Mediterranean and making money as it comes. But the way my business is set up, I can't be doing that, because I need to physically be present in Boston to produce and generate income. Whereas a lot of the agents we were in the room with, genuinely, we're still getting leads flowing through. They were just, handling the warm leads, if you will. And it's a good way to start planning for the future and just having an exit strategy. So we're not, 6 years old, still in production, still in the game. We can kind of take the back seat.
Yeah, which is 100% true. And no disrespect if you're 60 and watching.
Yeah, no, we love that.
Yeah, we love it. I'm just aware, and I've told this story multiple times. When I was kind of coming up in the game, I would be in masterminds, and it wasn't uncommon that I was one of the younger people in those masterminds, if not the youngest. And I remember saying out loud one time, hey, if I'm still on this call at that stage in my life, and I'm still talking about contacts and listings, I messed up, right? So beginning, it's one thing to generate income, and building wealth is a 3-step process. First, it's earning it, which very few people know how to do. And you know how to do that. And we work on that, continuing to get better at it. The second thing is keeping it, which even less know how to do. And then the third is multiplying, right? So what you were observing is these agents that are thinking like principals, and they're not just selling something, they're building something. They have staff and systems in place that when they're away, they handle the vast majority versus, somebody having to get pulled in and put out all the fires. They also not only do lead generation outbound, but they do marketing where there's have inbound leads coming to them regularly. They own assets that pay them money. And plus they have this other vehicle that stands next to them and pumps out cash. So
I think I learned in that, one of the meetings that because I do a lot of circle prospecting. And I think Jose said it was $4 an hour work.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, like, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm in Sedona. I'm trying to be fully present and engaged. It's very difficult for me to circle prospect for 3 hours while I'm in Sedona, where that's like a massive like pillar of my business, where I'm sitting next to someone that's getting a warm lead from, him outsourcing it to like a VA that's generating, but that's like a pillar or a system in place.
Yeah. And to your point, that's 100%. And this awareness that most high producing agents treat their business like a cash grab. So they're basically like, yo, how much cash can I rip out of this and then do the lifestyle things I want to do and never actually make investments back into the business, right? So it ends up being a kind of bottleneck for being able to put those systems, right? I also, what came up for me as I heard you talking, I know on one of our calls, you were like, I hired this person and like, it's like, first should I hire them? Then I hired them, but I found you found yourself like jumping in and hovering over them, like what they were doing. So A, there's a skill set on delegating, but B, what I shared with you is like, well, hiring people and expecting them to come up with the system never works. First, you have to build the system and then hire somebody to work the system. And I think you said something that's very accurate, that most agents, the fear is, well, if I take time doing that, then I won't be able to generate, and then I'll end up going broken alone and being by myself. At the same time, you are increasingly becoming aware that if you don't do that, while 27 million is fantastic, we'll never go to 60 million.
Because I just now hired an assistant, and I did 27 million without an assistant, and I already felt like exhausted. Like I was running around, I was exhausted. I was like, how am I even gonna be able to have a family, be a great wife, be a great mom, and run a business and scale it and grow without starting to, add staff, add systems in place. So that was super eye-opening and yeah.
And I love that. And then I think the other thing that I'm very well aware of, and I want to just acknowledge you for, is like you've also, once you got clear, you started, I said something to you, like if you want to have radical change, you need to change radically. Right? So you started to look at some of the things you were doing and being like, oh, this needs to change. So that way I can keep more of the income that I'm earning. Then I can hire the assistants and put the staff in place. So that way, this dream that you have, this vision that you have of having a thriving business, but also having thriving relationships with the people that you actually love and care about, they can coexist. They just can't coexist the way that I'm doing it right.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Well, what were some of those things you had to think about really long and hard and then make decisions about?
I also think that goes along the lines of like work smarter, not harder type thing, with having the staff and the systems in place. But for me personally, me and my partner both make great incomes. But for some reason, we're wondering like, why are we working so hard? We work, so much and make great incomes, but why are we like stressing at times? And it's like, okay, because for so long we've been optimizing for the wrong things, which is status and comfort, which I will say it's easy to get lost in that, if you will. Because I think society does a great job of, I think me and my partner both have a need for significance at a sense, but like at what cost, right? Because what really matters is our time together and having the financial freedom to do what we want with the people that we love. So we really had to take a look at our lives where, we were super into the fancy clothes, the fancy bags, the fancy jewelry, the fancy trips. But we're like, okay, is that taking us towards our goals of, when we have kids, taking a 3-week Euro trip and being fully present with them in the future? No, it's not, right? Because we're not spending that money wisely or investing in it to have that residual income and passive income. So we're really taking all the money, the cash grab, and then spending it, whereas we should be investing it to work for us in our future.
Yeah. And that's a huge, not only awareness, but a huge application, right? Where it's like, to your point, I think it's very, in a society that's 1,000% built on consumption, it's very easy to fall into that. And what's also true though, because you would say to me regularly, you're like, yeah, I want it all, man. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. just all in its proper place and its proper time, right? And to be able to kind of disassociate.
I was under a false belief system of that I want it all right now. Like, why can't I have it all right now? I work so hard. Right.
Yeah. And, and we just had to, we just had some conversations around that to get like clarity around it. And then what was really interesting too, is once you and your partner were able to be kind of in one place at one time, thinking about it and talking about it, that clarity came pretty quickly in terms of like, oh, no. Like, we really want to optimize for time freedom and location freedom. Here's all the reasons why. But then what's really awesome about that is that behavior begins to change instantaneously. See, the thing I think is super interesting is most people come, let's say, to somebody like me and they just want to talk about strategy. And strategy is cool. At the same time, what I'm aware of is that there's like results, there's behaviors, and then there's beliefs. So they come to me strategy, and they also come to me like, hey, I want to change this behavior. And they're not sure why it's not sticking and why they can't change it. Well, the main issue is because they haven't addressed the beliefs behind it. So you said you had a false belief system around it. And then as you begin to unwind that belief system, the behavioral changes are actually pretty easy, right? They're not like this like huge mustering of will and so hard. It's like, nah, dude, now I'm clear. We're clear where we're going. I
had a belief system that I made it if I had like a Rolex on. But like realistically, no, like I've made it when I can sit in and watch, like, obviously we don't have kids yet, but when we do have kids, like be at their game and be fully present with my family. Yeah.
And have no demands on your time, not having to run around and be like, oh, hold on, I gotta go.
And I think it's hard to make that radical change because with the radical change comes extreme discomfort. And it's, I think, human nature for the person to take the easier, like safe, comfortable route. So like we even went to the extent, or we are like considering selling our property, right? Because we have our property that we reside in, because we live there, we pay a hefty mortgage, and we're like, well, why don't we just sacrifice for a few years, be uncomfortable in the space, right? We'd rather be in our primary residence that we're in. It's brand new, like 2,000 square feet. But let's move back and optimize for freedom. Instead of paying towards our monthly payment, we can take that money, invest in it, and then have residual reoccurring income to work for us, or it will benefit us really in the future.
I love that. The quote that comes to mind as you say that is, if you live like no one else today, you'll be able to live like no one else in the future. It's unfortunate that at like real estate events or conferences, when they put people on panels, they don't look at like their net. The only thing we talk about is gross. Like we don't, and I think you got to be careful how you incentivize people, because it shapes behavior. So if you're giving people strokes and like emotional significance for gross and for flash, it ends up shaping behavior versus like me, let's say at events, giving significance about, hey, what did you net? Hey, how much did you invest this year? And then you have a whole room clapping. You're like, oh, now I'm getting significance for something that's actually going to serve me long term, right?
Okay, so I was going to say, I feel like the first step, because you and I talked about this for maybe like a year or so, but we read it. I feel like we really didn't, I feel like it would go in one ear and out the other. But I honestly think the first step, I was telling Cece, is like fully immersing yourself in the environment. So like we were there for 5 days. We were just getting like drilled with information. And then now we genuinely could not unsee it, even if we wanted to. Yeah. I think that that was a changing point.
Yeah, so maybe speak to that, because here you are, you're young, you do well, right? Like what causes you to be like, hey, let me go immerse myself, right? Let me go get in an environment where it's uncomfortable, where there's people that are like vibrating at really high frequencies. Because I know my life has changed because of going to events like that. And I know that we're all one relationship away from changing our family tree for the rest of our lives. So maybe talk a little bit about that.
I think there's a quote that's insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Mm-hmm. We've been to conferences and whatnot before, but not something. And it's funny because Cece and I would joke like to our friends, we'd be like, we're going to a real estate conference. Gabby's come on so many of my conferences. I'm just going to tag along with her. But it truly was not just real estate focus. It was like just your overall life, like CC took so many takeaways from it as well. But I think we were, I don't know, like we like I said, we both make great incomes, but we just wanted to change something. Like how can we work smarter but not harder? Like how can I be home at like 6 p.m. and be fully present and like engaged with CC? How can I have like the weekends off? Or do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah. So like, in other words, there was a part of you, and I know I also would do everything possible to get you to come. And I think the other thing that like,
you were doing everything.
And people should know too, though, because I think this is a really cool testament. So, I would say to you like, hey, you need to come to this. You need to come to this. This is great. You need to come to this. You come to this. And I think when most people hear that, they're like, oh, like, all right, bro, like you just want me to. At the same time, the reason why I'm like that is because I know that with a super high degree of probability, you're going to have the type of experience that you have. Because when you think about it, even if you implemented two of the things we've talked about, you end up in a completely different destination. I think that that's awesome. And I guess I'm curious. So like moving forward for you now with this like awareness, like what do you see the next 12 to 18 months? Like how do you see those playing out for you guys?
I think taking a step back from the business or I think naturally you take a step back if you need to put systems in place. It takes time to do that, right? So instead of prospecting, I'm spending maybe like my mornings for a week, putting my systems in place, and then training my staff to execute on that. So I guess really focusing on thinking of the business as a true business and entrepreneur mindset, as a principal of the business, and how can I make my business run when I'm not in the actual like game, meaning when I'm not behind the phones, prospecting, etc. And then I think obviously with the money that's coming in, obviously we get big paychecks and whatnot, but just being very thoughtful and intentional of where that money is going, and how I can make it work or honestly, I just can't get out of my mind that we're not optimizing for status and comfort. I honestly, since the event, have not thought about one designer thing. In fact, I want to sell my Rolexes.
I love it, dude. Well, and again, like there is a time and place, and we talked about it where it's like there's some rules. If you can pay for it twice in cash, otherwise you can't afford it. 2 is like it's got to come out of cash flow, not earned income, and 3, it's dumb. I know it's dumb. It tells time just like anything else, but don't try to justify it. But like, there's a time and place. It's just that what's becoming very clear to you is like, oh. So I love this. So what's coming up for me is like, all right, so during our calls and our time together, we're going to continue to work on implementing these systems and processes and procedures, whether they be lead levers as well as back-end systems. So that way, you have leads coming to you and you have people in place that are helping you facilitate the income servicing part of the business. So it's not taking up as much as your time. We're being conscious and purposeful stewards of the resources that are coming in. And actually measuring. I know you shared with me one time and I was like politely pushed back. You're like, yeah, dude, like I hear from a lot of people, they're like, well, I just don't know like where it goes. And I'm like, well, you got to be mindful what you say out loud. Like you're saying like as though it has like some magical control. It's just numbers on the screen.
Yeah.
And then also like, again, thinking long term. And I think that's also a big pivot is going from short-term thinking, immediate thinking right now, to long-term thinking, which is like, hey, if I don't make this change, where does it lead 5-10 years from now? And if I do make this pivot and change, where does that lead 5-10 years from now?
I think too, some people get caught in, because I felt I was under this impression, but I was under the impression, and I'm curious on your thoughts on this, but like I'm going to spend my money now and enjoy life because you never know what could happen tomorrow. How do you take that mindset, but also optimize for the future? Because who knows what could happen in like a week or so. So why would I want to miss out, I guess, on that gratification now? How would you manage that?
Well, a few things. Like the thing, I'll give you a good example. So I remember being on a mastermind call. And again, I was one of the younger ones. And there's this guy on the call. And they were doing this thing like, what would be your dream like day? And he goes first and he's like, and all these people are very high level doing like $1 million plus in GCI. That's the criteria for being on the call. And he's like, yeah, I wake up in the morning next to my like beautiful significant other. And we make love like 3 times. And I'm like, all right, that's already wishful thinking. And then he was like, yeah. And then I jump into my Bentley and I go to the office and I have 5 listing appointments waiting for me. And I do all the listing appointments. And then there's 5 closings that happen that day. And then I hop back in my Bentley and I drive back home and I pick up my beautiful significant other and we hop into a helicopter and we fly to the top rooftop restaurant. It was like a lot of this very circumstantial, significance-based stuff, right? And I remember when I heard it, it felt like, I don't know, it just felt a little off. And then I asked another guy in my life who was like a mentor of mine in a different space. I said, hey, what would be your perfect day? And he was like, well, I wake up in the morning. He's like, and I do something. I'd either work on a project, like maybe like a book or like something that I'm creating, or maybe something around the house because I like the way that energy feels to like be in the process of like creation. He's like, then I go to the gym because he really enjoys that physically. He's like, probably play some racquetball because he enjoys that. And he's like, yeah, I would do like, I would take a couple calls because he's like a consultant. He's actually like a therapist. He's like, yeah, because I really enjoy working with people. He's like, then I'd pick my significant other up. We'd go out to the movies because he really likes going to the movies. He's like, we go out to eat. And I thought to myself, I was like, that's very interesting. He said, why? I said, well, 2 things. The first one is it doesn't really cost that much money, if any at all. The second one is I'm like, bro, that's what you do every day. And he was like, yeah. So he basically created his perfect day. He does it every day. And he's one of the most present, like joyful, enjoying their experience people that I know. Like he was in his 70s and you know what he said to me? Because I was like, the average age of 78, whatever. And he was like, man, I really hope I get like 30 more years because I'm having such a good time.
Oh,
I don't know.
I love that.
Bro, I don't know a lot like who talk like that. They're more like, like whatever, like, right?
Yeah.
But he's like thoroughly enjoying himself. So that became like, it just became clear to me. So like the things that me and, for me, and I know some of the things you enjoy, but like I enjoy like playing pickleball. That doesn't cost a lot of money. I enjoy spending time with my family and children. Like depending on what we're doing, like it doesn't really, it's not that, I shared with you, we went on a cruise, but like the thing that I enjoyed the most was that nobody's phones worked. And we basically hung out with each other for like the whole day, every day. That's what I enjoyed the most. The food's fine, the experience, like whatever, but like that's really what brought me like joy. I enjoy spending time with my wife, just talking to her. Like, we could go for a walk, like whatever. So I think what's interesting is once you actually, like, as you're going down this path, because it's not if, it's when, because you're making conscious, purposeful decisions, you will begin to recognize is that the money wasn't actually what you were really after. Like it's cool and it has its proper place. Like what it really does is buy options, choices, and like good medication, good education. But it's limited in its capacity for what it can do. And so that's the way I think about it. And by optimizing for time freedom and location freedom, you're actually freeing yourself up to make deposits in the things that actually are really enjoyable and valuable to you. Does that make sense? And then I think the difficult part is like, as you start to do this and move in this direction, society will like aggressively push back. Like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm. People are like, you're crazy.
Yeah, like you're crazy. Like I tell people I rent, they're like, what? What was interesting is I became aware like, oh, this old mental map, which is like, hey, success equals a really big house. You're looking in the wrong place, right? Like I'm focused on something different, right? I'm focused on actually, like building something that provides income so that way I have time freedom, location freedom, and I can pour into the things that I actually are important to me. So it really is, truthfully for me, like it's a privilege and a pleasure to work with you. I really enjoy doing so. I'm excited for you, like what you're implementing. And I know it's a lot of change at one time, which can be stressful for you. At the same time, I know that it's good. So if people want to find you, because I think, they may have some questions about this, if they got referrals for you, I know you're in Boston proper. How can they connect with you? What's the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah, they can go on my Instagram at Gabrielle Russo _realty, or they can and send me a DM, or they can send me a text, 781-315-3868. And then to piggyback off that, Aaron, I'm very grateful to work with you because I will say that you've been a true mentor and leader in just life. So I understand that you're a real estate coach, but I really think that you've helped us as a family, like in our everyday life.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. It's a pleasure and a privilege. So I appreciate you, and I look forward to reconnecting soon.
Thanks, Aaron. Likewise.
Yep. These are legitimately some of the top real estate agents on the planet. 4% of all businesses that are ever started in the United States do over $1 million a year in revenue. If somebody's earning between $500 to $1 million in GCI, you are the top 0.001% of all agents on the planet. So let's give them a round of applause, please.